"Mummy, you'll die if you eat that."
My 9-year-old son gently whispered to me in front of the cake my husband had bought for my birthday. Despite his young age, our son always seemed unusually wise, as if he knew something beyond his years. While my husband stood in the kitchen, my son quietly swapped my husband's plate with mine. 10 minutes later, my husband suddenly started suffering, foaming and collapsing. I panicked and called an ambulance, and he was rushed to emergency. I was later horrified to learn of the horrific plot that was going on behind the scenes. I am Allison, 43 years old, a full-time employee in the food industry. I live with my husband, Ryan, who is 2 years older than me, and our 9-year-old son, Ken. Ryan and I married 10 years ago, and the following year, we were blessed with our son, Ken. My son was mature and smart from a very young age, and from around the age of 3 he could read simple kanji as well as hiragana, and he loved reading product instructions. And now, at the age of 9, whenever he doesn't understand a word or is curious about something, he looks it up until he is satisfied. And I was often impressed by her sharp comments that I sometimes did not expect. My husband, on the other hand, was kind and gentle while we were in a relationship, but after we married, it turned out that he was a bit bossy. He firmly believed that household chores were a woman's responsibility, and women should follow men 3 steps behind. He doesn't lift a finger to help me at home, and yet he always tells me off everything I do. It was when I sent my son to preschool and started working part-time.
Hey, the rooms are messy lately. You must have been slacking off on cleaning.
It's hard though as we both work, so I need you to help me a bit.
You are barking up the wrong tree, as housework is the wife's responsibility. If you say you can't, then I'll ask my mother.
Saying this, he handed the key to my mother-in-law without telling me. She lives with my father-in-law at their house in the neighborhood, and she always wants to have her finger in the pie about our married life often, and she's been a thorn in my side.
You haven't done any housework at all, have you? I feel sorry for Ryan like this.
She started to enter the house without permission, and every time she did so, she began to make sarcastic comments to me. I regretted ever asking him to share household responsibilities. To make matters worse, he delighted in his mother's visits, and together, they started to criticize me. I was fed up with it. "I can manage the house just fine, so you don't have to come over, Mom." I bowed and rejected her, and I ended up doing the housework all by myself. However, since then, he started spending more time at his parents' house. He's been visiting there more often since his father passed away recently. One day, when I was sick with a fever, I contacted him at his parents' house to ask if he could at least prepare dinner for Ken.
Mom didn't make Dad do anything even when she was sick.
He swore at me and even said,
"I'm gonna stay here for a while 'cause I don't want you to give me a cold."
Then he didn't come home for a week. While I had to put up with his attitude for a while, my son started going to primary school. I had a bit more time on my hands, so I decided to take the plunge and change to a full-time job. I was feeling insecure about my marriage with my husband, so I decided to be properly independent in case things went wrong.
You can get a full-time job, but don't skimp on the housework.
My husband, who I knew would be against it, threw the expected words at me, and of course he did not help me at all. Instead, he seemed to tell his mom on me.
He complains that you're not handling the housework properly. So, I've decided to go and help.
She started to barge into our home again, and when she saw my face, she would make a series of sarcastic comments to me. I was exhausted by a repeat of things like that. Perhaps because my son had seen this, he started talking to my mother-in-law whenever she started nagging me.
"Grandma, do you know what the 4 main elements of happiness are?" Then, what about happy hormones?
What are you talking about?
They are oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine and endorphins. These are secreted by the pituitary gland in the brain. I'll explain them to you in detail.
It seems that she can't interrupt him as she loves him. However, he would show off all his knowledge of science, history, maths, economics and wherever he got it from, so my mother-in-law was always worn out. Before long, one day when my son turned 9, my husband bought a cake for me on my birthday. While he has always bought my mother-in-law expensive brand bags and clothes for her birthday, he has never bought me anything since we got married. What brought on this? I was surprised. Also, he was even in a good mood.
Thank you for everything. I love you.
He said things like this, which are inane words.
I chose a tart cake because it's your favorite.
As he said this, he was full of glee and served the cake onto plates. Would you like some cakes, Ken? When I knocked and opened the door, he was doing some research on the second-hand computer I had given him, as soon as he got home.
I'll be right there, wait for me.
Then as soon as he sat down at the table, he sneakily whispered to me.
Mummy, you'll die if you eat that.
What? What are you talking about?
I'll explain it to you later, just trust me for now.
He spoke with a firm tone, looking directly into my eyes. I didn't understand what he meant, but it was the first time he had asked me to believe him so strongly.
Hey, what's wrong? Aren't you gonna eat it?
When I hesitated and didn't touch the cake, my husband rushed me. I'd like to eat this cake with the coffee you made.
Okay, sure. I'll make it now.
My husband, who usually never does what I ask for, quickly went to the kitchen. My son took the opportunity to swap my husband's plate with mine. When he returned with coffee, he ate his share of the cake without doubt and urged me and my son to eat it too. I had a bite timidly. My husband watches us eat and grins.
I went all the way to a famous cake shop to buy it.
He bragged, saying it. However, after about 10 minutes, my husband suddenly started foaming at the mouth and collapsed on his back. Oh God.
Mummy, call an ambulance.
My son calmly made my husband spit out the contents of his mouth, while I was panicking, unable to understand what was happening. With trembling hands, I made a phone call to call an ambulance. In the ambulance, my husband mumbled repeatedly, being half unconscious.
I put powerful powder in the cake though.
He was saying it over and over again, as if he was delirious. Soon after, my husband arrived at the hospital and survived, but had to stay in hospital for a few days for tests. Even after completing paperwork for hospitalization and going back home, the word powerful powder, which my husband repeatedly muttered, was still stuck in my ears.
Mommy, I just looked up powerful powder on the internet and it's apparently dangerous to eat.
How do you know that, Ken?
The sticker on the box of cakes that Dad bought had half peeled off.
He was suspicious about this, observed my husband and found that he had secretly thrown something in the rubbish bin. Then while he went to change his clothes, my son checked the bin and found a bag marked powerful powder.
That's what I found online.
I vividly remembered my son whispering, "You'll die," just before we ate the cake. But the doctors at the hospital didn't say anything about poisoning.
Yeah, that's because I made him throw up most of it. Powerful powder isn't dangerous unless you consume a certain amount. So I don't think the tests will show anything.
If my son hadn't acted quickly, I might have eaten that cake. Just thinking about it gave me a chill in my spine. I wonder if he really prepared to make me dead by putting such a thing in the cake? We should go to the police right away.
I don't think you should do that.
Wait? How come?
Because it was Dad who collapsed. If you report to the police now, you might be accused of the crime.
His words stunned me, and everything before me went blank. I completely understood what he said and I felt hopeless, wondering what on earth I should do.
Mummy, don't worry. I'll handle it.
He then went to my husband's study, which he was usually told not to go in without permission, and started looking for something.
I'm sure he left something in there, I know him well.
My husband was meticulous, always jotting down notes in his schedule book. Soon after, my son showed me one of his schedule books. I looked in it and found a detailed description of the ingredients of the powerful powder and how it worked. Are you kidding me? And as we read through the schedule book, my son and I discovered a horrifying truth. To my surprise, He had already used this method, and it was my father-in-law who fell victim to a crime. The results of giving him a little more each day were clearly documented, and on the day he passed away, the note said, "Send him to heaven with 10 grams." Even more surprisingly, my mother-in-law helped him with it. They plotted together. Turning the page, we found a note that said it will take place on my birthday.
Are you okay, Mummy?
He called out to me and I realized I was trembling with fear and anger. I won't allow them to target me even after they did to my father-in-law. This schedule book will serve as evidence, won't it?
Unfortunately, it won't. They can easily get away with it saying it was just a note for his own imagination. Besides, Grandpa is already gone, buried in his grave. There's no way to investigate further.
You're right. Without evidence, we couldn't bring them to justice. As I pondered our next move, he took my hand tightly in his.
I'll find evidence, and I'll definitely protect you, Mummy. We're gonna catch the suspect together.
I nodded emphatically and held his hands. Then I made up my mind. If they want to do it, I'll take it. I will save my life for my son's sake. Also, it will help to settle the score for my father-in-law. With determination, we vowed revenge against my husband and mother-in-law. Our battle preparations began.
I bet Grandma hasn't given up yet.
Following his advice, I decided to keep an eye on my mother-in-law. She came to the hospital to visit my husband every day, and one day, when I was watching her, she went downtown, many stations away from the nearest station to their house. I followed her and she went into his sketchy private shop in an alley off the main road, and after a while she came out of the shop with something in her hand. "Hi, Mum. What are you doing here?" When I called her out pretending I bumped into her as I came out onto the main street, she turned around with a start.
What are you doing in a place like this, Allison? You don't go to visit Ryan, rather, you're enjoying shopping in the lap of luxury?
I have something to do for my work. However now, Ken is anxious about Dad's hospitalization. Could you come over to cheer him up? I invited my mother-in-law, who was being sarcastic in her usual tone, to our house. Normally I would never invite her in, but on this day I had to do something. As soon as we got home,
Grandma,
he greets her with a happy face.
I want to show you something. Come to my room for a minute.
He pulled her hand and forcefully took her to his room, giving me a signal with his eyes. Meanwhile, I checked the contents of her bag that my mother-in-law had just brought out of the shop. Inside the bag was a white powdery substance. I took a small sample and transferred it to another bag. The next day, I knew exactly where to take it. A few weeks later, on the day my husband was discharged from hospital, I asked my mother-in-law to pick him up. Meanwhile, my son and I prepared a table full of dishes to welcome them. We also made a crucial setup, which was a container of white powder, much like powerful powder. As soon as my husband and mother-in-law entered the room, my son led them to the table.
You know, I helped make this feast. Dig it up.
They sat down in front of the food and after a while began to whisper something.
Mom, could that be?
Of course not. There's no way it would be here.
They looked at the white powder on the table and turned pale. Are the meals all right? Even though I asked about the food, they remained silent, refusing to try the food. By the way, this powder is said to boost energy when sprinkled on meals. I handed the white powder to my son, saying, "Sprinkle it for them."
Stop it. Don't put something we don't know about.
My husband shook my son's hand off with a terrified-looking face. What makes you both so frightened? I want both of you to stay healthy. I put on my best smile and she shouted.
Enough.
How come? You also poured it over the cake because you wanted me to stay healthy, didn't you? You ended up eating it yourself and being taken to the hospital in the end though. I presented a document to them, who looked startled. I had our company's inspector analyze this substance. Here are the results. It contains dangerous components, and depending on the amount, there is a possibility that you could end up being a dead man. He had shifty eyes when unexpected evidence was presented.
What are you talking about? I know nothing about it.
But I had the substance from your mother's bag tested.
Do you always open people's bags without permission? Also, I only bought it because I heard it was a dietary supplement.
I confronted them with more evidence to the two of them, who keep on playing dumb. Well, what's this then, it says, send him to heaven with 10 grams. This is the date your father was rushed to the ambulance, isn't it? When I put a photocopy of my husband's scheduled book on the table, my husband, who had been silent for a while, began to speak, as if he accepted it without a fight.
Dad was annoying. He didn't like how close Mom and I were, and he always bossed us around everything we did.
Exactly. He constantly meddled between us, always sticking his nose in. Do you think I can't forgive someone like that?
Perhaps they bore a grudge against my father-in-law, who warned them as he worried about his mama's boy and his son's mother who is over-attached to her son. I was disgusted with how selfish their motives were. Then, taking advantage of the fact that things went well with my father-in-law and it didn't get caught, he also tried it on me.
You're an eyesore too.
Yes, you are. You are really annoying to us.
That's not a damn good reason to make us dead. What you both have done is a crime. I'm gonna report this to the police now and also provide the evidence.
I won't let you do that.
He suddenly lit the documents on the table with a lighter.
Now there's no evidence. The police will probably dismiss the report as a make-up story of petty revenge for bullying the daughter-in-law you made against my mom.
He came up to me with a confident look, but my son pointed out nonchalantly.
Dad, that's just a photocopy. Also, I recorded the whole conversation just now on my voice recorder. It serves well as proof.
What the?
He turned pale in a moment.
We were so close to getting rid of the obstacle.
She was also stunned.
How could you think of carrying out such a sloppy plan, Dad? But whatever plan you have made, there's no way it's going to be successful because I'm right here for Mom. If I were you...
He showed them off on and on about his meticulous plans, leaving them speechless. I reported everything to the police and told my son. There's no way your dad is capable of doing that as he is Mama's boy who depends too much on his parents. But you shouldn't become like him, Ken. You must use your knowledge wisely.
Of course, I will. Don't worry, Mummy.
All this time, they both remained silent, unable to say anything back. We don't need a husband or father like this.
Don't say that. I'll apologize. Just don't call the police.
I'm sorry.
Although the two suddenly started to make a humble apology, it was too late. At best, you should reflect on what you did from behind bars. Goodbye. In the meantime, the police arrived and the two were taken away crying and screaming. Soon after, the photocopy of his scheduled book and the voice recorder audio served as evidence, leading to my husband and mother-in-law's arrest. The investigation extended to the individual shop where my mother-in-law purchased the poison, resulting in the shop owner's arrest as well. I divorced my husband and I claimed $19,800 each as compensation for the attempt on my life by my husband and mother-in-law. They will have to sell the in-laws' house to pay the money, leaving them with no place to return to after getting out of jail. I left the house where I had lived with my son.
I believe you have the 4 main elements of happiness, so you'll definitely be happy, Mummy. I guarantee it.
You do? I'm already happy because you've helped me become free though, Ken. Smiling alongside my son, we're making the most of every living moment. How did you find this story? Please subscribe to our channel. Until next time in the next video.